The Galactic Defense Council chamber hummed with the quiet authority of the universe's most powerful civilizations. The crystalline walls shimmered faintly, catching the light from distant nebulae that swirled beyond the transparent dome. Each seat in the circular room was filled with delegates from advanced species, shapes and forms as diverse as the galaxies they hailed from. Some gleamed with metallic sheen, others pulsed with bioluminescence, and a few seemed more shadow than substance. Yet despite their differences, they shared one common trait. They all looked down on Earth. General Thorax of the Scion Empire leaned back in his elevated chair, his iridescent scales shifting like liquid light as he adjusted the ceremonial gravity dampeners clasped around his shoulders. He exhaled audibly, inflating his secondary air sacs in a gesture of exaggerated boredom. "Let me see if I understand this correctly," Thorax drawled, his voice sharp enough to cut through the chamber's quiet murmur. "The humans, this species that still relies on combustion to escape its gravity well, believes it has earned a place among the galaxy's elite defenders?" The chamber erupted into polite but unmistakably mocking laughter. Delegates chittered, clicked, and rumbled their amusement, a chorus of derision that echoed off the crystalline walls. In the center of the room, seated alone at a simple table, was Dr. Zhao, Earth's representative. His tailored dark suit and calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the opulence and posturing of his alien counterparts. He sat perfectly still, his hands folded neatly in front of him, his expression unreadable. Thorax continued, his scales shimmering brighter with smug satisfaction. "Tell me, Dr. Zhao, how does your species, bound as you are to such primitive means of propulsion and technology, propose to defend against the threats of the greater galaxy? Or do you intend to wave sticks at them as you have done on your own war-torn planet?" A delegate with crystalline arms that refracted light like prisms tittered. Another, an orb-shaped being with hovering appendages, emitted a series of tones that translated roughly to charming, adorable even. Dr. Zhao let the moment hang. The laughter and derision rippled through the room like waves, bouncing off the walls and gathering momentum. Then, just as it began to crest, he spoke, his voice low but unyielding, slicing through the noise with the weight of a neutron star. "With all due respect, General Thorax," Zhao began, his tone cool as a moonlit sea, "I believe you're operating under some misconceptions about Earth's capabilities." The laughter faltered. Thorax's scales rippled faintly, a flicker of irritation breaking his facade. "Misconceptions?" he repeated, leaning forward slightly. "Your species still crawls on the edge of its own atmosphere. What could I possibly have misunderstood?" Zhao didn't flinch. Instead, he reached for his datapad and tapped a few commands. The chamber lights dimmed, and a holographic projection appeared in the center of the room. The image showed Earth's surface from orbit, clouds drifting lazily, oceans shimmering in sunlight. But the focus quickly shifted, zooming in on a small playground where children laughed and waved. Above them, barely visible, hovered a sleek alien vessel cloaked in shimmering invisibility. "This," Zhao said, gesturing to the projection, "was taken last year. Your stealth reconnaissance ship, General Thorax, the one you thought was undetectable." The chamber fell silent. The image shifted, showing close-up footage of the ship, its contours highlighted by human radar overlays. Then another cut, a clip of the ship's crew receiving a package on their observation deck. Zhao's voice broke the silence, calm and matter-of-fact. "We thought it only polite to greet you. I trust your crew enjoyed the Twinkies we sent aboard?" A ripple of shock passed through the chamber, followed by an uncomfortable shuffling of appendages. Thorax's air sacs deflated slightly, his gleaming scales dimming. "A coincidence," Thorax said, his voice sharper now. "Your primitive systems stumbled onto something they couldn't possibly comprehend." Zhao raised an eyebrow, his faint smile unchanging. "Our primitive systems calculated your ship's trajectory, tracked its patterns, and even accounted for your cloaking distortions. It wasn't difficult. Your technology is sophisticated, but it relies on predictable quantum harmonics." Someone in the back coughed, laughed, and quickly disguised it as a cough. Zhao, noting the reaction, pressed further. General, if our primitive technology can detect your most advanced stealth systems, imagine what we're capable of when we try." The chamber was silent now. Delegates glanced at one another, some blinking nervously, others shifting in their seats. Thorix's scales flickered again, this time betraying a hint of unease. "And yet," Thorix snapped, rallying his composure, "you dare suggest that this anomaly qualifies you for membership among the galaxy's elite? A single trick does not earn you a seat at this table." Zhao leaned back slightly, his gaze unwavering. "Then let us prove it." The words hung in the air, daring anyone to challenge them. Thorix seized the opportunity, his scales gleaming with renewed confidence. "Very well," Thorix declared, rising to his feet. "A demonstration. If your species is so proud of its ability to survive your high-gravity death world, then let us see if you've mastered it. Move a mountain." Zhao's smile widened slightly, the kind of smile that sent shivers down spines. "Move a mountain?" Thorix nodded, his smugness returning. "You have 1 week. Prove to us that your technology is not the primitive patchwork it appears to be." Zhao stood slowly, gathering his datapad. 3 days, Thorix blinked. "What?" "We'll be ready in 3 days, Zhao repeated. "I suggest you prepare your observation team. Oh, and General?" Thorix's scales rippled as he stared down at the human. "What?" Zhao's faint smile sharpened, his tone as light as a spring breeze. "Bring your gravity dampeners. You might find them necessary." With that, Zhao turned and strode out of the chamber. The doors closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the room. Thorix sank back into his chair, his air sacs swelling and deflating rapidly. "They're bluffing," muttered one of the crystalline delegates. "No primitive species can move a mountain." Thorix hesitated, his scales dimming as an unwelcome flicker of doubt stirred in his chest. "Of course they're bluffing," he said, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. "What's the worst they could do?" Somewhere, far beyond the crystalline walls of the chamber, the universe seemed to chuckle. The Himalayan morning was crisp, the air so clear it seemed to sparkle with frost. The jagged peaks surrounding the test site rose like ancient sentinels, their snow-capped ridges glowing faintly under the first rays of sunlight. At the base of Mount Kunlun, an unassuming camp bustled with activity, a controlled chaos of human and alien technology cobbled together in a way that only humans could achieve. Rex Martinez, the lead engineer of the Mountain Mover project, took a long sip from his thermos. The words "I move mountains" literally were emblazoned across its side in bold letters, a gag gift from his team that had aged into a badge of honor. Rex was a broad-shouldered man with the calm confidence of someone who had spent most of his career solving problems everyone else called impossible. "Are they really bringing all that fancy alien equipment just to watch us work?" Rex muttered, nodding toward the sleek, angular ships descending from the sky. The vessels hovered effortlessly, their curved surfaces gleaming like liquid metal. "They're not here to watch," came the familiar voice of Dr. Zhao, who approached with his usual unhurried pace. His dark coat flapped lightly in the cold breeze. "They're here to confirm their assumptions about our failure." Rex smirked, taking another sip. "Good. Nothing better than proving someone wrong before they've had their morning tea." Behind them, the camp buzzed with purpose. Massive hydraulic rigs, painted in utilitarian grays, were being bolted into the ground by teams of technicians. Humming generators powered quantum stabilizers, their hot pink lattices casting faint geometric shadows across the snowy terrain. "Are the pink grids really necessary?" Zhao asked, raising an eyebrow. "Of course," Rex said without hesitation. "Visibility, obviously." He winked, his grin betraying the joke. "And it annoys them." A short distance away, a cluster of alien observers emerged from their ships, their forms bristling with disdain. General Thorix led the group, his iridescent scales dulled by the cold. He adjusted his gravity dampeners as he surveyed the scene, his expression a mix of skepticism and superiority. "Your setup appears rudimentary," Thorix said, his voice carrying over the bustle. "Exposed hydraulics, mechanical stabilizers, and what is that garish color?" "That, General, Rex interjected, approaching with a swagger that seemed to unsettle the alien entourage, "is the color of winning. You might want to get used to it." Thorax's secondary air sacs puffed slightly in irritation. "We shall see. Your bravado will not lift a mountain." "Bravado doesn't lift mountains," Rex replied, his tone turning serious. "Physics does." The general's entourage murmured among themselves, their sleek instruments already scanning the human technology. One alien, a crystalline being whose surface refracted light into shifting rainbows, clicked a series of sounds that translated into their disbelief. "They're using mechanical force amplification," the crystalline alien said. "Primitive, inefficient, absurd." "They said the same thing about the wheel," Rex shot back, stepping into the exoskeleton suit that awaited him like a mechanical cocoon. The mountain mover exoskeleton stood nearly 10 feet tall, its exposed hydraulics and reinforced carbon joints giving it a rugged industrial appearance. Unlike the alien technology, which hid its mechanisms behind sleek panels and seamless designs, the exoskeleton wore its engineering on its sleeve. "Let's get this dance started," Rex muttered, stepping into the suit. The technicians activated the mounting sequence, and the exoskeleton unfolded like a blooming flower. Rex stepped inside, feeling the familiar hum of its systems syncing with his movements. As the neural interface came online, the suit became an extension of his body, responding to his thoughts with fluid precision. "Power level stable," called Dr. Patel, the team's head of cybernetics, from her workstation. "Quantum stabilizers are at full capacity. Rex, you're good to go." "Copy that," Rex replied. His voice was steady, but his pulse quickened as the suit locked into place. Thorax and his team observed from a safe distance, their instruments trained on every movement. One of the aliens muttered something in their native tongue, translated as, "This is madness. No mass reduction fields. No gravitic nullifiers." "They don't get it," Rex said, more to himself than anyone else. "They don't need to," Zhao replied, stepping closer. "Just make sure they see it." The exoskeleton moved with a grace that belied its size. Every step Rex took left a faint impression in the snow, the hydraulics purring softly as the suit adjusted to the uneven terrain. As he approached the mountain face, the pink lattice of quantum stabilizers shimmered, their energy lines vibrating faintly in the cold air. "Beginning geological scan," Rex announced, his voice relayed through the camp's speakers. The suit's sensors mapped every crack, fault line, and structural anomaly in the rock, his heads-up display filled with an intricate web of data, density readings, stress tolerances, crystalline formations. "Think of it as a first date," Rex quipped. "Gotta know your dance partner before you ask for a lift." The humans chuckled, but the aliens remained silent, their expressions growing more unreadable by the second. "Anchor points established," Patel announced. "You're clear to engage." Rex took a deep breath. The weight of the moment settled over him, not the physical weight of the mountain, but the burden of proving humanity's worth to an audience that had already written them off. "Activating stabilizers," he said. The lattice of pink energy pulsed, creating a three-dimensional grid that wrapped around the section of the mountain they had targeted. It shimmered like a net woven from sunlight, each intersection point glowing slightly brighter as the system calibrated. "This is ridiculous," Thorax muttered to Zhao. "You expect us to believe they can accomplish this with nothing more than brute force?" Zhao smiled faintly, folding his hands behind his back. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most elegant." The exoskeleton's hydraulics hissed as Rex extended its arms, embedding the suit's mechanical hands into the rock face. Quantum fields activated at the contact points, fusing the suit's stabilizers with the mountain. "All systems nominal," Patel said. "Ready when you are." Rex grinned. "Time to dance." He initiated the lift sequence, and the suit responded instantly. The quantum stabilizers pulsed, their energy rippling through the rock like waves across a pond. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the mountain began to move. The ground trembled faintly, a low rumble that built into a resonant hum. Snow cascaded from the higher peaks, a sparkling avalanche that caught the morning light. Thorax's scales rippled in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. The mountain rose, 12 million tons of granite, snow, and ancient sediment shifted in perfect harmony, guided by a web of quantum force and human ingenuity. The pink lattice glowed brighter, its intersections pulsating with energy as the stabilizers compensated for the immense weight. Thorax's instruments went haywire, their readings defying every calculation the aliens considered fundamental. One of his scientists clutched their crystalline appendages, muttering, "This cannot be. They're rewriting the laws of physics." Zhao turned to Thorax, his expression calm, his voice even. "No, General, we're just following them better than you do." As the mountain hovered above the ground, Rex's voice crackled through the speakers. "So, where do you want it? We could put it back, or maybe carve it into something more decorative. A monument, perhaps." The human camp erupted in cheers. The aliens said nothing. Their stunned silence was louder than any applause. The mountain hovered in the air like a defiance of nature, its colossal mass suspended by a glowing web of pink quantum stabilizers. The rumble of shifting rock had subsided, replaced by a faint hum of energy that filled the camp. Rex Martinez stood at the center of it all, encased in his exoskeleton, every movement a blend of brute strength and meticulous control. His voice came through the speakers, calm but tinged with humor. "Well, that's one way to lighten the load. Anyone want to take a guess at its weight? Spoiler alert, it's heavy." Laughter rippled through the human camp, but the alien delegation remained frozen. General Thorax's scales had dulled, his usual iridescence dimmed to a muted gray. The instruments his team had brought, gleaming arrays of scanners and hollow projectors, blinked and sputtered as if refusing to acknowledge what they were witnessing. This is a trick," Thorax stammered, his air sacs puffing erratically. "It must be. They've hidden gravitic nullifiers somewhere, some unseen mass reduction field." "Gravitic nullifiers?" Rex's voice crackled through the intercom, dripping with mock innocence. "What's that? Sounds fancy." Thorax shot a glare toward Doctor Zhao, who stood at the edge of the observation zone, his hands clasped neatly behind his back. Zhao's face betrayed no emotion, though a faint upturn at the corner of his mouth hinted at his amusement. "General," Zhao said, his tone unhurried, "if you'd like, we can provide you with a complete breakdown of our methods. Of course, I'd need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement first. Trade secrets, you understand." One of Thorax's scientists, a crystalline being whose refracted light patterns had turned chaotic, stepped forward, clutching a datapad. "The energy readings are consistent with raw mechanical force amplified through quantum stabilizers," the scientist said, their voice a fragmented mosaic of tones. "There's no evidence of mass reduction fields. They're doing this without bypassing the gravitational constants." Thorax turned on the scientist, his scales flaring slightly. "That's impossible. No species, primitive or otherwise, could achieve this with such inefficiency." "In some circles," Zhao interjected, his tone conversational, "what you call inefficiency, we call ingenuity." The mountain shifted slightly, the stabilizers adjusting to keep it perfectly balanced. Rex moved with it, his exoskeleton's hydraulics hissing as the suit translated his smallest motions into massive adjustments. It was like watching a conductor lead an orchestra of physics itself. "Phase 1 complete, Doctor." Patel's voice cut through the camp's intercom. "Mountain stable at current elevation. All systems holding at nominal levels." Rex took a step back, letting the stabilizers hold the majority of the load. "You know," he said, his tone light, "this mountain's been sitting here for millions of years, minding its own business. And in just a few minutes, we gave it a whole new perspective. Humans are good at that, changing perspectives." The human team chuckled, but the aliens weren't laughing. Thorax paced along the edge of the observation zone, his claws clicking against the frost-covered ground. "This doesn't prove anything," he muttered. "Moving a single section of rock does not make your species worthy of this council." Zhao raised an eyebrow. "Would you prefer we move a larger section?" Thorax stopped mid-step, his scales flickering between pale and dark hues. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Zhao asked, his voice even. Patel's voice interrupted again, her tone far too cheerful for the situation. Stabilizers are ready for Phase 2. We can increase the load by 50% if you'd like. Thorax's scientist choked out a sound that might have been a plea. General, please, the energy displacement. Hold that thought, Rex interjected, his voice rising with a new edge of determination. Let's show them what Phase 2 looks like. The stabilizers pulsed, their pink lattice glowing brighter as the mountain began to rise higher. Snow and loose debris cascaded down the sides, glittering in the morning sun like a shimmering waterfall. The air was thick with the hum of quantum energy, vibrating with an intensity that could be felt in the bones. Thorax stumbled back, his gravity dampeners whining audibly as they worked overtime to stabilize him. His entourage followed suit, retreating farther from the observation line. "General," Rex called out, his voice amplified through the speakers. "You're not getting cold feet, are you? Or scales, I guess." Thorax snarled, regaining his footing. "You mock us, but you do not understand the implications of what you are doing. The forces you are tampering with could destabilize this entire region. If your primitive methods fail, the consequences could be catastrophic." Zhao tilted his head slightly, studying the general with an expression that bordered on pity. "You assume we don't understand the forces we're working with," he said. "But what you fail to see is that we've spent generations living under forces your kind can barely comprehend. Earth's gravity doesn't just pull us down, General. It shapes us. Every step we take is a negotiation with physics. Every innovation we create is born from necessity, not luxury." Thorax's response was cut off by a loud mechanical whine. The mountain stopped rising, its massive weight now suspended at double its original elevation. The stabilizers adjusted again, their lattice shimmering as they redistributed the load with millimeter precision. "Maximum elevation reached," Patel announced, structural integrity holding at 94%. Stabilizer fields operating within acceptable variance. Rex took a step forward, his exoskeleton's joints groaning slightly under the strain. He turned toward the aliens, his movements slow and deliberate. "So," he said, gesturing toward the floating mountain, "what do you think? Should we keep it here, or maybe move it over a bit? Could make a nice addition to your council chamber. Real conversation starter." The human camp erupted in laughter. Even Zhao allowed himself a small chuckle. The aliens, however, were silent. Thorax's scales rippled with something that might have been anger or fear. He turned to his entourage, barking orders in a language filled with clicks and growls. His scientists scrambled, their instruments struggling to reconcile the data streaming in. "This changes nothing," Thorax said finally, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "You may have lifted the mountain, but you have not proven yourselves capable of standing with the galaxy's elite." Rex powered down the exoskeleton, stepping out of the suit as the stabilizers held the mountain in place. He walked toward Thorax, stopping just short of the observation line. "With all due respect, General," Rex said, his tone calm but firm, "we're not interested in standing with the elite. We're interested in showing you what happens when you underestimate humanity." Thorax said nothing, his scales dimming to a pale gray. The mountain hung silently in the background, a testament to human ingenuity and a warning to anyone who doubted it. The mountain loomed, suspended in defiance of every universal constant the alien observers held sacred. The pink quantum stabilizer lattice glowed steadily, pulsating like a heartbeat. The air was thick with tension, broken only by the faint hum of stabilizer energy and the occasional creak of snow and rock settling into their new, airborne reality. General Thorax's scales dulled to a muted shade, his earlier bravado replaced with visible discomfort. His entourage whispered furiously in their native tongues, their eyes darting between their malfunctioning instruments and the impossible scene before them. "General," Dr. Zhao began, stepping closer to Thorax with an air of calm authority, "are you prepared to admit that your assumptions about humanity were premature?" Thorax puffed out his air sacs in an attempt to regain composure. "You've demonstrated that you can lift a rock, a feat of brute force and recklessness. Hardly grounds for joining the Galactic Defense Council." "Brute force?" Rex Martinez's voice crackled through the intercom. He stood beneath the mountain, encased in his exoskeleton, the glowing pink lattice reflecting off his visor. General, if this was brute force, the whole thing would have collapsed by now. What you're looking at is precision engineering, quantum physics, and a little thing we humans call finesse. Thorax glared, his scales flickering. This is nothing more than a parlor trick. You cannot possibly understand the implications of— The implications? Zhao interrupted, his voice as calm as ever. Oh, we understand the implications perfectly. Shall we review them together? He gestured toward the mountain with a slight tilt of his head. 12 million tons of rock, perfectly stabilized, no mass reduction, no gravitic nullifiers, just a detailed understanding of stress distribution, quantum harmonics, and, of course, gravity itself. Thorax's scientists, still frantically scanning the scene, exchanged panicked murmurs. One crystalline alien clutched their device, muttering, "The stabilizers. They're adjusting in real time. How? This level of precision is beyond any primitive calculation." Primitive. Patel's voice piped in over the intercom, dripping with honeyed sarcasm. Oh, I love that word. You know, General, humans hear it a lot. You call us primitive because we don't hide our engineering under sleek panels or fancy alloys. But here's the thing. While you were polishing your ships and designing gravity dampeners, we were busy learning how to work with the forces you've spent centuries trying to cheat. Rex stepped closer to the observation line, his exoskeleton hissing softly with each movement. We didn't beat gravity by ignoring it, General. We beat it by understanding it better than you ever could. Thorax opened his mouth to retort, but one of his aides cut him off with a frantic chirp. General, the readings, they're stabilizing the mountain with quantum uncertainty fields. It's impossible. Zhao turned to Thorax, his expression polite but unyielding. Impossible? Or simply something you never thought we were capable of? Thorax's air sacs deflated slightly. His gaze shifted to the mountain, then back to Zhao. Even if this display is real, it does not prove your species belongs in the Council. One demonstration does not erase millennia of technological inferiority. Rex's laugh echoed through the speakers, low and deliberate. You want more? We can give you more. Patel's voice chimed in again, cheerful and almost sing-song. Phase 3 ready to initiate on your command, Rex. Thorax's scales flashed a pale blue, a sign of unease. Phase 3? What else could you possibly have to prove? Just watch, Rex replied. The stabilizers pulsed brighter as Rex re-engaged the exoskeleton's neural interface. He stepped forward, his movements synchronized with the lattice of pink energy. Slowly, deliberately, he began to rotate the mountain. The massive slab of rock, snow, and ice turned in midair, its edges gleaming as sunlight caught the crystalline formations embedded within. The lattice adjusted seamlessly, maintaining balance as the mountain pivoted like a colossal sculpture on a display stand. The alien observers gasped, their disbelief turning to awe. Even Thorax took an involuntary step back, his gravity dampeners whining under the strain of his sudden movement. Rotational stabilization complete, Patel announced. Quantum harmonics are holding steady. Looking good, Rex. Thanks, Doc, Rex replied, his voice calm. You know, I think this angle really brings out the mountain's best side. What do you think, General? Should we keep it like this? Or maybe add a little tilt for flair? Thorax's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His entourage exchanged panicked looks, their instruments confirming what their eyes refused to believe. Zhao stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. General, your silence speaks volumes, but if you're still unconvinced, we can arrange another demonstration. Perhaps a larger mountain next time? Thorax's scales flared briefly before dimming again. Enough, he said, his voice low but strained. You've made your point. Have we? Zhao asked, his tone measured. Because I don't think the lesson has sunk in yet. Patel's voice interrupted, laced with amusement. Rex, how about we show them the full range of stabilizer capabilities? Let's give the mountain a little bounce. Thorax's eyes widened. Bounce? What does that mean? Rex grinned beneath his visor. Hang tight, General. You're about to find out. The stabilizers pulsed again, their lattice shifting slightly. With a gentle adjustment from the exoskeleton, the mountain dipped lower, then rose higher, in a slow, controlled motion. It bobbed in the air like a buoy on a calm sea, each movement precise and deliberate. The alien delegation recoiled, their disbelief now mixed with something far more primal: fear. This is madness!" one of Thorix's aides exclaimed. "You're tampering with forces that could destabilize the entire region." "Destabilize?" Patel replied with mock concern. "Oh no, we're stabilizing. Trust me, if we were destabilizing, you'd know." The mountain settled back into its original elevated position, the lattice dimming slightly as the stabilizers adjusted for long-term support. "Final position achieved," Patel announced. "All systems nominal. Great work, team." Rex stepped back from the observation line, powering down the exoskeleton. "So," he said, removing his helmet, "what's next, General? Want us to juggle it?" Thorix's scales rippled faintly, the faint blue of unease now tinged with the green of reluctant admiration. He turned to Zhao, his voice quieter than before. "You've made your point. Humanity's ingenuity is formidable. But do not mistake this for acceptance. The Council will require more than brute demonstrations." Zhao smiled faintly. "Of course, General, we wouldn't expect anything less. But let me be clear. What you've seen today isn't a one-time display. It's the beginning of a new understanding, one that we're happy to share. Assuming, of course, the Council is willing to learn." Thorix said nothing, his gaze fixed on the mountain as it hung in the air, defying everything he thought he knew. Around him, his delegation whispered furiously, their earlier mockery replaced with a quiet, uneasy respect. The mountain remained still, a silent monument to humanity's ability to turn the impossible into reality. The mountain hung in the crisp Himalayan air, its massive weight defying gravity with a quiet grace that seemed almost serene. Around it, the pink quantum stabilizers pulsed steadily, a monument to human ingenuity and audacity. Rex Martinez stood at the base, helmet tucked under his arm, his exoskeleton powered down but still commanding attention with its rugged industrial design. The alien delegation, led by General Thorix, remained huddled near their observation line, murmuring in hushed, frantic tones. Their instruments, advanced by galactic standards, continued to spew data that defied their understanding of physics. Every scan told the same story. The humans had achieved the impossible without the tools the Council had deemed essential for such feats. General Thorix's scales shimmered faintly as he stepped forward, his earlier arrogance tempered by a mix of frustration and reluctant admiration. "You've proven that you can manipulate gravitational forces with a precision I did not think possible," he admitted, his voice low but steady. "But feats of strength and engineering alone do not grant entry to the Galactic Defense Council." Dr. Zhao stepped into the conversation with his usual composed demeanor, his hands clasped lightly behind his back. "General, I believe what we've demonstrated here is more than strength. We've shown you a new way of thinking, a method that doesn't rely on circumventing universal laws, but on understanding them at their most fundamental level." Thorix's scales rippled, his air sacs inflating slightly in an attempt to regain authority. "Understanding alone is insufficient. The Council exists to protect the galaxy from threats beyond comprehension. Can humanity offer more than its mechanical bravado?" Zhao raised an eyebrow, his expression unchanging. "You're asking if we can contribute. I suggest you take a closer look at the data your scientists are currently struggling to analyze. Or perhaps you'd like another demonstration." The General's delegation stiffened at the suggestion. A crystalline alien scientist stepped forward, holding their sputtering datapad. "General, with respect, the readings from their stabilizers suggest a method of gravitational manipulation that operates without disrupting local space-time. It's not brute force. It's controlled quantum fluctuation." Thorix turned sharply to his scientist. "And this is unique?" The alien hesitated, then nodded. "It's unprecedented. If scaled, it could stabilize planetary tectonics or mitigate black hole distortions. This is far beyond the scope of the demonstration." Zhao allowed himself a small smile. Thank you. And that's just the beginning. Thorax's air sacs deflated, his posture relaxing slightly. He glanced back at the mountain, which remained perfectly balanced, its pink stabilizers a testament to the achievement. Your methods, he said grudgingly, are unconventional, but they have merit. Rex, who had been leaning casually against his exoskeleton, straightened. Unconventional? General, that's just a polite way of saying genius. The human team chuckled, but Zhao raised a hand to quiet them. His gaze remained locked on Thorax. General, you must understand, humanity's strength lies in its ability to adapt. You've spent centuries underestimating us because we don't do things the way you do, but perhaps it's time to reconsider what makes a species valuable. Thorax's scales shifted again, this time with a faint shimmer of something resembling respect. I will admit, Dr. Zhao, that I did not expect to see what I have witnessed here today. Few do, Zhao replied smoothly. But the galaxy is changing, General. The threats you face will require new perspectives, new approaches. We believe humanity can offer that. Thorax exchanged a glance with his entourage. The murmurs of dissent among his team had quieted, replaced with cautious agreement. The Council, Thorax said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision, will deliberate on Earth's application. Your demonstration will be reviewed, along with the implications of your methods. Patel's voice cut through the tension, chipper as ever. General, if you're deliberating, I'd recommend a full briefing on our stabilizer tech. We've got diagrams, schematics, maybe even a TED Talk ready to go. The general ignored her, focusing on Zhao. You should know, Doctor Zhao, that even with this demonstration, there will be those who resist your inclusion. Earth's reputation as a primitive world will not be erased overnight. Zhao nodded, his expression serene. We're not asking for overnight, General. We're asking for the chance to prove ourselves. What you've seen today is just the beginning. Thorax's air sacs deflated with a resigned sigh. He turned to his delegation. Prepare the report for Council deliberation. As the aliens retreated to their ships, the human team erupted into cheers. Rex tossed his helmet into the air and caught it with a flourish, his grin wide and unapologetic. Well, he said, turning to the team, that went better than expected. Zhao watched the alien ships lift off, their sleek forms disappearing into the clouds. It's a start, he said quietly. Do you think they'll vote us in? Patel asked, joining them at the observation line. Zhao's faint smile returned. If they don't, they'll regret it soon enough. Behind them, the mountain still hovered in place, a silent testament to what humanity had achieved. The stabilizers pulsed softly, their pink glow reflecting off the snow. Rex tilted his head, studying the massive structure. So what do we do with it now? Leave it floating? Use it as a tourist attraction? Patel grinned. We could carve a message into it, something tasteful like humans were here. Or, Rex added, we could gift wrap it for the Council, pink ribbons to match the stabilizers. Zhao shook his head, his voice laced with dry humor. Tempting, but let's avoid provoking them further, for now. The team laughed, their camaraderie unshaken despite the weight of what they'd accomplished. As the last of the alien ships vanished into the distance, Rex clapped a hand on Zhao's shoulder. So, Doc, what's next? Think we can move the whole mountain range? Zhao's smile widened slightly. One mountain at a time, Rex. One mountain at a time. Above them, the sun broke fully over the peaks, bathing the scene in golden light. The mountain hung silently, its reflection shimmering on the snow below, a symbol of humanity's defiance, ingenuity, and determination to claim its place among the stars.